Hello, you're watching Artist Rap, conversations with musicians, artists, and creative people. We will share stories, concepts, life, and music. We hope these unique insights and topics will enrich your day. I'm your host, Ali Jackson.
It's so funky.
Good day. This is Ali Jackson here. I'm live here with Artist Rap, and today's guest is one of my huge heroes and inspirations. He happens to be one of the world's great percussionists, also exceptional educator, manager, and all-round exemplary human being. Speaking of none other than the marvelous Tim Adams. Welcome, Tim. How are you?
And thank you. I'm great. My mother must have called all big things about me. I appreciate that.
Well, yeah, you got to thank the parents, right?
Yeah. It's great to see you in this time when we can't be together. We can be together.
Yeah, this is one cool thing about technology, and I've been a huge proponent. I'm a tech geek a little bit, so
That's great.
it's cool to actually see people. I mean, we've gotten into the world of they call it social distancing because of this coronavirus, but in actuality, we've been social distancing since the invention of smartphones or people being able to text and just actually not have real substantive human connection. So I know you're a huge proponent of that, and most artists, we live in a dichotomy of two worlds, kind of. So, we spend a lot of time in solitude when you're practicing. So you're alone quite often. However, when you're performing, it's in a social environment. So,
Right.
um, before I go like crazy in, because this is gonna be so easy, I want to just kind of stay on task. Give our listeners, viewers, a little perspective on how a black man such as yourself that grows up in the South, uh, family of, I'm not going to say they're modest means, yeah. Um, how does someone like you become one of the world's top classical musicians? And you could just go back to your childhood and how did it start for you?
I've told this story many times, but now the story has a different quality about it because I can't move. I can't move about. So somehow my reflection on me has changed. I never thought I'd come back to the South. Having left at 18, I made a concerted effort to say I'd never come back. But my dad was a band director, and I went to my first concert when I was maybe 6 months old. I was born in August. I went to my first concert in December. And so I went to every Christmas and spring concert until I went to college. And I was always around music and always listening to music. There's always music played in the house, everything, from gospel music, John Philip Sousa, Alfred Reed, Fifth Dimension, Parliament, whatever I wanted to hear, I could listen to. There was no restriction on that. And I was always around my dad's band, when I was maybe 2 or 3, when he would have parades, I would always hold his hands and walk in the parade with him. So I did that for many years. And then as I got older, I guess around 6 or 7, I would be in his marching band rehearsals, and I would always gravitate to the drum line. And so I would literally go sort of like underneath the snare drums. And then at 7, I told my dad I wanted to play drums. He said, well, he wanted me to play oboe or bassoon because he thought that I could get a job because there's not a lot of bassoonists and oboe players. So he didn't discourage me. So I studied with him for a year. And then when I was 8, I studied with a student teacher of his. His name was Clarence Daniels. He was a percussionist. And then, to my parents' credit, really wanted to make sure I got the right training. And so from the time I was 9 until I was 17, I studied with a percussionist in Atlanta Symphony. And his name was Bill Wilder. And I love him. I love him not because he taught me, but he taught me with a lot of love right after segregation. So schools integrated for me fourth grade. And that is when I started studying with him. But he only saw a kid that wanted to play. So he gave me everything. He taught me to play every instrument. Snare drum, mallets, timpani, drum set. And my teachers from college get all the credit for my success, but he's the reason that I have had a career. And I tell him that, and I tell him I love him every time I talk to him. I owe him a call. And he's still playing in Atlanta Symphony now. He's been there for almost 50 years. I was one of his first students. I was 9 and he was 23, right out of the University of Georgia, ironically. So that was my journey. I love the music, and I didn't have an attraction to classical music necessarily. It was just one of those activities. Like I played baseball, and my dad taught me how to play golf. So it was just one of the played in band and jazz band and marching band, and I had a little funk band my junior, senior of high school. In the 8th grade, the Atlanta Symphony started Atlanta Symphony Youth Orchestra, and I saw the advertisement. My parents did in Atlanta General Constitution, and they said, "Son, you want to play in this youth orchestra?" I went, "Yeah, sure." And so they called back when you would have to call on the phone. Then they mailed you music with people would mail, not PDFs. And so they sent me the music, and I showed it to my teacher, Bill Wilder, and we worked on it. It was like Polka from the Golden Age, Shostakovich, and I think it was Peter and the Wolf on snare drum, and something on timpani. I can't believe I remember that. And I didn't think it was very difficult. I told my teacher, "Is this hard enough?" He said, "Yeah, it's fine." So I played it. I got in. I was one of the youngest percussionists in the section. I was in the 8th grade, and everyone else was in college at Georgia State. And so I was in the section, and then in the 9th grade, I became the principal percussionist. In the 10th grade, I became the timpanist, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. And I just liked the way it sounded. And so, each year I go back and I had better experience. I think the tipping point that turned me to pursue a career as an orchestra player was in the 8th grade, my first year that the orchestra existed. Jack Bell, who's the principal percussionist of the Atlanta Symphony, had a master class. And he fielded the questions. I raised my hand. I said, "Mr. Bell, do you play in the Atlanta Symphony for a living?" He goes, "Yes." Okay, so there are more questions. I raised my hand again. I said, "Mr. Bell." He goes, "Yes, Tim. So you don't have to teach. You don't have to be a band director. You don't have to do anything. They pay you to play percussion." He said, "Yes." Tim, I went, "Yes, Tim. I just want to make sure I understand that they pay you to play percussion for a career." I said, "Yes." I went, "Okay." So I went home that night, and I told my parents I wanted to play in a major orchestra when I grow up. That was it. And so everything faced in that direction from the 8th grade until I graduated high school. So another kind of pivotal moment was when my dad was a band director for 36 years. My mother was a principal, so education was preeminent in my family, and then in the Adams family. In the Adams family, there like 6 doctors, 5 dentists, and we'd have. I'm digressing, but you'll see why. We have family reunions. It'd be like 150 people, and everybody went to college, and half of them had master's degrees. So that's the story that people don't know about Black people. That when you look at the media, that was my reality. That was basically the norm. Is that most Black people were educated. If they weren't educated, they had great jobs, and they weren't shooting each other and blowing up. It just that drug thing was not my reality, and it's not most Black people's reality. So me being a classical musician as a career choice is sort of regular. It's not that big a deal, but it becomes like this thing of this Black person that made it, when in reality, everybody in my family made something. They did something with their lives. So this was just regular. This is regular. So my dad, his flutes were weak, in his band program. So he thought, well, I'm going to go take flute lessons from the principal of flutist in Atlanta Symphony. Okay, so that's what he did. So we would both have lessons at the same time. We go to lessons, on our drive home, we figure out how the best way to tell my mother and his wife that we didn't do well. So we'd be, try to figure out even here. So we get in there and she'll say, how did he go today? And we go, she go practice. So she sent us both to the room to practice, which is hilarious. And so when Paul Jančić got the timpani job in Atlanta Symphony, Warren Little was the principal percussionist. He told my principal flutist, he told my father, you should have Tim study with Paul Jančić. He's a timpani player, our new timpanist. He makes the timpani sound like a bass. It's really beautiful. And so I asked my teacher, Bill Wilder, would you mind if I take some timpani lessons with Paul Jančić? He says, yeah, sure. So I started with him my junior year of high school. So I was taking percussion lessons, timpani lessons, and then piano lessons. So I was in youth orchestra, so I was driving to Atlanta 3 times a week when I was 16. And so I was studying with Paul, and then my senior year, I started playing extra in Atlanta Symphony. I was like the 4th player, so I was playing every other week. So I've never really had a job other than music. So I've been very blessed. I mean, so my parents' things were, you don't need a job, you need to study. My dad was working since he was 7, so he was adamant about his son is not going to have a job. His son will get his education, and whatever he decides to pursue, that's what he will do. So I thank him and my mother for that. And so I started playing in Atlanta Symphony when I was 17. So I played every other week, so I was like the 4th player. And there were a couple of pivotal moments that I remember. We played Mahler 5, Recapitulation of the first movement. There's a beautiful timpani solo, and I look over at Paul and think about it. And then at the very end, there's this great melodic thing on timpani. Bing, ba, ba, bum, 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 bum. Then it was a particular B flat. There was one particular roll note, and it grabbed my attention. And then about a few months later, we did Don Juan, this piece, this beautiful horn called, and he plays this G roll. And at the end of the concert, I said, man, where'd you go to school? He said, the Cleveland Institute of Music. I said, who did you study with? He said, the timpanist was Coy Duff, and my percussion teacher was Richard Wien. I went home, and my parents said, I want to sound like Paul. I want to go to Cleveland. That's how I got to Cleveland, to go to school in Cleveland, because I wanted to sound like him. But my percussion teacher knew that I loved doing everything, marching band, jazz band, concert band. So I also auditioned at IU. I got a full scholarship at IU, everything, and I didn't get any money at CIM, and I went to Cleveland. And, my parents really invested in my education, and what they did was, I don't think they have it now, that you can take a loan out for 4 years for a college education, and it's paid off after 4 years, like a car loan. So when I graduated, my education was paid for, thanks to my parents. But I did not get a scholarship. I had to pay. But I turned out pretty well based on having a really great education. And so, that's how playing in an orchestra and following that career path was strictly a career choice. The music did not resonate with me any more than soon and very soon we're going to see the King. It all makes me feel the same, just like Parliament, just like Miles Davis. I mean, there's sort of like no lines for me. It's just that it was a career choice, and so I kept getting better at it, and I started to understand where I could go and what that particular career could show me, which was the world. And so I just kept pursuing it. And I went to school in Cleveland, and then my senior year I started a rock band, had a video on MTV. I played keyboards, bass guitar poorly, but I didn't have to play that well. And it was great. Our manager was the assistant manager of Michael Jackson. And so our video would always play before Thriller. So I did that for 2.5 years.
Wow. Go.
Then I played bass guitar and keyboards and sang. I did a lot of studio work. Probably half my studio work was singing. I sang a lot of jingles. I did a lot of backup singing, a lot of lead singing. I sing okay, but I could sight sing well, and I had good rhythm, and I could do it right the first time. So a lot of singers can't do those things, but they can sing better than me, but I was cheap. So, I could play percussion, I could play drum set, then I could sing. So I was like a one-stop shop. So I go to the studio and do 8 hours and knock out a whole bunch of jingles. And that was one of the ways that I made my living in between undergrad and grad school. So I had a rock band. I was playing 4 nights a week, all originals. We had 40 tunes. We did a Beatles tune that you couldn't recognize. So it was like 40. We had 40 tunes. Then I did studio work. And I was playing in the Canton Symphony. Job I won my senior year of college. And I played in that 2 years out of college, then went back to graduate school. I went to Tanglewood the summer before, and that got me back into classical music again. So Vic Firth was a really great timpanist from the Boston Symphony. And back then, he would go around the country to audition for Tanglewood. So I got in, and I went there the summer before. I went back to graduate school, and that was a great experience. Played a lot of great conductors. Bernstein, I had lunch with him. I went to probably 30 master classes of his. We have meals together all the time, and Zell was there, and Trevor Pennick, and all the great orchestra conductors. Most of the good ones are dead now. And then I made some recordings, and my first recording was with Atlanta Symphony. I was a sophomore, got nominated for a Grammy with Carmina Burana. That was cool. Did a couple of recordings with Atlanta Orchestra when I went back to graduate school. So after a year and a half of graduate school, I got a job in the Florida Philharmonic, and I was as a timpanist, and I played timpani in the Canton Symphony for 5 years, Florida Philharmonic for 4, the Indianapolis Symphony for 4, and the Pittsburgh Symphony for 15. And then after 15 years of playing there, I just quit. I was just going to do something else. And during that time, I did a lot of session work and played on a bunch of funk records. A good friend of mine, Dwayne, Dolphin, played on all of his records. In Indianapolis, I played in the quartet with Rob Dixon. Actually, that quartet opened up for Terrence when he came to Indianapolis. And I was playing a lot of drums in Indianapolis. So when I was there those 4 years, there were people who didn't know I played in the orchestra. They thought I was a drummer because I would play timpani, ba-da-da-ding, bum, bing, bum, bum, and then dee-da-dee, like 20 minutes later, I got hit. So I would set my drums up at 5 at the club, then I play, then I go back to the club. And then I was playing 3 or 4 nights a week for 4 years in Indianapolis. And I was going to quit to be a drummer. And a little side note, my dad has taught me out of quitting all 3 of my jobs. Thank God for him. And so that's kind of the short Reader's Digest version of I guess my music career. And I quit 10 years ago. Now I teach at the University of Georgia. I didn't do much for 9 years trying to really focus and build a program there. And this past year I started saying yes to things, so I started to go out and play more. And play in Pittsburgh and Buffalo Phil and Irish Orchestra and some solo stuff.
This is brilliant. I just love to just hear you speak about your journey because it's definitely extremely unique and one worthy of people hearing. Do you think if there was more solid opportunity for you when you were younger in music, would you have, instead of going or playing more exclusively classical music or classical percussion, would you have ventured into a different direction or musical?
Well, I was doing all of that at the same time. Like in my junior, senior year, I had a funk band I was playing drums in. And then all the way through college, I played vibes and a little jazz thing. And I played a lot of drum set. My parents never had to send me money for 4 years of college because I was playing bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs. I was playing a lot of drums. I mean, playing drum set was the way I made money. It was the way I bought tambourines and triangles and snare drums. Was playing drums was how that's so when I started to do a lot of studio work, I mean, I was being called like the first called drummers because I could read and I knew all the styles well and I can play with a click. So playing drums was always an integral part. And like I said, since my family, this is what our family is like. When you're like 7, they're like, now baby, where do you want to go to school? It's not, this is 7. This is not, are you going to college? Like, where are you going? That's like give another example. I would go home to South Georgia. think I was a sophomore, and one of my cousins, she taught French in Manhattan. She lived in the village, and she said, Timothy, who's the mayor of your city? I couldn't remember. Timothy, who's the congressman of your state? I didn't know. He said, young man, you must know these things. I mean, that's what it was like going. I mean, I'm trying to be on vacation. I'm getting grilled because I'm uninformed. So that's why in 8th grade, I thought, well, all these all the posters that I had in my basement, it was not the Cleveland Orchestra or Pavarotti, or it was Parliament, it was Earth, Wind and Fire, it was Jackson, it was Confunction, it was OJ's, it was, it was the music that I loved to listen to and that I liked to play. But in the 8th grade, that's why, because I love playing percussion. And so when that man said that, because the orchestra was like a new thing. So when I played all these other styles of music, but an orchestra is such a unique sound. There's nothing that sounds like it. It doesn't matter whether you like it or not. There's nothing that sounds like that thing. And in the 8th grade, I sat on the stage and I had like a visceral reaction to it. I'm like, this is wow, I've never seen this before. And then, so when I asked the guy if he made a living, I'm like, I'll just do that. And it just made sense to me. And it's funny because, like I said, in Indianapolis, I was going to stop to be a drummer. And I knew how to do it because I know how to practice. I said to myself, well, if I take 6 months and practice about 10 hours a day, these are my weaknesses, I can fix those. So I know I'd have a shot at it. But my dad was like, I understand, son, just make sure that you can make the same living you make now doing that. And I thought it would take me too long to get there. So it wouldn't make sense for me to stop to be a jazz musician. At that point, I met Winton in 91 at Eastern Music Festival. I was playing xylophone in the window, and he walked by, and I knew who he was, man. I was shit. I was just practicing. And then he came, then the music director of the festival, I was putting some percussion in the music festival. He said, this is Winton Marcel. Hey, man, it's nice to meet you. I went back and kept practicing. That's nice. I got shit. I got rehearsal in 2 days. I'm working. And then later that day, Shelley was going to take Winton to lunch, and Winton said, no, I'm gonna go with 10. I mean, so from that day, we spent like 4 or 5 hours together. He was there for another day. We spent like 10 hours together, and then we became, friends. I mean, close. So we talked a lot on the phone. He called me from Japan. That was like that for 4 years. And so when you come in,
what time period was this? This was what?
91 to 95. And that's when his septet was really hitting all over the world. It was like constant. And I saw him a lot. I saw him 3 or 4 times a year. In Chicago, I mean, I would drive up, and we're exact same age. And so we're doing our thing. It didn't really, you don't have a lot of people to talk to sometimes when you're at a particular level. I don't mean that in an egotistical way, but kind of you're by yourself. And so we would talk a lot on the phone. He'd call me like 3 a.m. in Japan and play stuff. He'd play like one Blue Interlude, that one record, Blue Interlude. He played the whole thing on record. On the phone, he was in Japan. We talk all the time, weird times of day and night. I see him in New York. And some of that was there was a little bit of an influence, but I had Rob Dixon's a really great tenor sax player. You might know who he is. I was in his quartet. We played a lot, and I just love that camaraderie of playing jazz music. And I wasn't really sleeping. We'd be up like 3 or 4 in the morning. He'd come on, man, show me. I'd play these chords, and we just be constantly inundated in music. And the reason I didn't jump ship was I knew I couldn't make the same living at the same amount of time that I needed to. And so my decision to play in an orchestra was always a career choice. That's it. I mean, I always tell my students, it's like, I could be the butcher in Kroger. I just happen to play the timpani. That's it. I mean, everybody put the stamp on the back of you because people need to put you in a box so they can understand who you are. That's kind of the American way. That's human nature. People can't really dress a person to just be a human or be versatile. They have to put you in a box so they can contain you intellectually to them. And so subsequently, I don't mind wearing the back. I don't mind wearing the tag because I've been all over the world doing it. Beautiful thing. But, I mean, it's just kind of a roundabout way to answer your question, but I was exposed to it. But the decision to do that was based on my upbringing. And then I just like the way the music. And it's funny now, depending on how we get out of this, I mean, I feel another career path is going to come depending on how we can get together. But I'm not sure if that answers your question. Is that?
No, it was very, very completely.
Okay.
You completely answered the question, and you added the perspective of you did things. And the thing I kind of want some listeners to understand, there are different technical requirements to play in an orchestra as opposed to, and there's technical requirements to play in jazz as well. However, the economic support or constructs of the different musics, they're just different. So you're in a different, and for you to have the fortitude to understand it and the opportunity and the focus and ambition to want to do it and to not actually be biased. There's a lot of variables in there that people should understand. So could you just go into, like, from a technical requirement for those who are actually be a really good musician, but there's some technical and there's some social variables that you have to understand in, let's say, in pursuit of an orchestra job. So maybe you could.
It's funny. I always tell, and I would do these lectures in orchestras, and I'd always say it's much easier to be a classical musician than it is to, say, be a jazz musician or to be a musician of other genres, because to me, to be a jazz musician, especially a jazz musician, it's like I'm going to be a magician. So watch this. It's just like, and I say that because there's really no linear way to it. It doesn't matter what a person's journey is; they can tell you, but if you do the same thing, it will not give you the same result. It's almost the way to have a really great career. It's like a griot kind of vibe. It's like you find the people that mentor you, but you have to be good so you can get mentored. It's like it's messed up. But I mean, it's beautiful. It's very difficult. But for an orchestra musician, it's very easy. Meaning, it hasn't changed in 250 years. My teacher that passed away in 2003, he played the same pieces I played my entire career to get jobs. It hasn't changed. There's like 50 or 60 pieces as a timpanist, and about 80 pieces you have to know to win an orchestra job. They haven't changed. That's not true. There's been like escapades and some John Williams things and some John Adams things added to the list, but the list has not changed. So in order for you to not be successful in classical music early is kind of strange, because you can find the information. It hasn't changed. And that's kind of the thing that makes it sort of difficult, is that it's so logical that people don't go in and do the work to do it. So to answer your question specifically, when you take an orchestra audition, percussion or timpani, you have X amount of bars that you play. And you have to play them in a way that's expressive. But you don't miss, you don't make mistakes, ever. I mean, in an audition, you might make one or two, but in general, because it's so specific and it's so competitive, because an orchestra audition only happens if somebody retires, dies, or gets fired. So if a person gets a job, they could be there for 30, 40 years. So you can literally track your opportunities in an orchestra. And I used to do that. When I was a freshman, I knew everybody's age and when they would leave. Literally, I didn't have a chart, but I knew if by the time I get 25, that he'll go. And so, so your opportunities are few. So the preparation that's required is uncanny. Because remember, if you don't win, it's gone for 40 years. That's literally it. That's why when people come to audition All the places I teach, they go, yeah, Mr. Admiral Tim, I want to play in an orchestra. I'm like, okay. Or even freshmen, I want to be a performance major. I said, great. As long as you're comfortable with the idea that you may never get a job, then you do it. If you feel like you're comfortable with that possibility that you will not ever be employed, then you have to play. If that makes you uncomfortable, do not do it. And it's even more poignant as a jazz musician. The level has to be so excessively high for you to even get paid a living wage. It's because the music is just not respected in this country. Never has been. I mean, it is by default because people leave such a great legacy and there's so many great musicians that carry the torch. But the reality is you don't get paid. It's ridiculous. Now, in an orchestra, because of the competitiveness and the fact that the music is read, and as long as you get the job, you play on time, don't play late, don't play early, don't play too loud, don't play out of tune, man, you're good to go. I mean, it's just really about being consistent and obviously being an artist on your instrument. But you find your creativity in the constraints of the big picture and what this person allows you to do. So there's a lot involved mentally with the calisthenics that's required to play with 100 people, especially in a solo position like being a symphony player. You're negotiating a lot. You negotiate this person that can't conduct, so you're interpreting this nonsense, and then every section plays at a different. They don't play together. Strings go yeah. I mean, the trombones are basically always a little bit late. Tuba's real late. Bass is extremely late. Violet. The clarinets play too soft. They sound kind of late. Flutes are pretty much on time. Trumpets are real quick. Trombone horns are going the other direction, so they're playing on top of the beat. It's just like a mess. So once you get really good at it, it's like mental calisthenics. It's unbelievable.
Well, I'm glad I'm not the only person that notices it, because in playing an orchestra, my experiences is always that. And if you're a percussionist or a drummer, and ultimately in a jazz context, you're the conductor, because everyone has to follow the drums. But that analogy or perspective of what it's like inside of an orchestra, most people have no clue. It's like you have all of these sections, and everyone's basically kind of doing their own thing.
And it's your job to facilitate,
right, bridge the gap
from front to back. Right. My buddy Dwayne, I had him sit next to me in a rehearsal. About 10 minutes, I said, "Man, watch this." And about 10 minutes in, he was like this. He's like, "Is that what you hear?" I went, "Yep." He says, "How do you?" And I would always make all the assistant conductors, that would get up and try to give a lecture and talk about, they can't conduct. I said, "Man, come back here and sit next to me." And they're like, I said, now you see what we need. We don't need you to be cute. We need you to be clear. That's all. And so the same thing is required being a drummer in a small ensemble. The aesthetic of the instrument does not change. I mean, just, the bass might be amplified, but it still has a tendency to be slow because it just has the piano's on time because it's struck. The tenor sax is a little bit late. Alto's a little better. Trumpet's really quick. Trombones, who knows? And it's just a mess. And so you have this. The negotiation is the same. And if people trust you, then you have an opportunity for everybody to play together. So the chairs end up having the same responsibility, and it's not something that's forced. It's something that's earned. And so so to make a comparison between what's required, for a jazz, see a jazz drummer, then a classical percussionist, you have the drums. So okay, it's one instrument, but it's like a percussion ensemble. And there's a lot to negotiate. You have time, you have texture, you have color, and then you have how do you deal with time? What's your responsibility if you ride a cymbal? I mean, and ride cymbal becomes every drummer's identity and every drummer's calling card, how you swing on it, and or hi-hat. I mean, it's being a great strength. It doesn't matter. You can find a book for everything you need to do to play drum set. You can find a book. There's no question. And the rhythms are written correctly. They are right. And you can take a mambo and you go listen to somebody playing. You go, there it is. But when you play drums, you have to have the coordination. But more than anything, it's a feeling. You don't need that kind of feeling in an orchestra because that's not your role. So your response. So the challenge to get to both careers are the same. One is just more institutionalized, but it takes the same amount of years to be good at the craft. The difference is, in an orchestra, you can actually be very, very green and not very good, but exceptional practicing and really good, talent, and you can win an orchestra job and learn on the job. Whereas in jazz, you can't do that. I mean, you can't learn to swing for 10 years and then have a career. It just doesn't work that way, So, as a percussionist in an orchestra, there's just a lot of instruments. It takes a lot of time. I always say it's like you have to get comfortable with being schizophrenic because you have all these different techniques that's required. But you're a percussionist. That's what we do. It's not even that big a deal. You play percussion, you play this stuff. You play everything. So we're wired a particular way. And it freaks some people out, but it's in our DNA. We play a bunch of stuff, and some stuff I don't do. I'm not playing tabla. I'm not disrespecting those people's music. I'm not.
Well,
Like 5 years I gave away.
well. This is a thing as you go on a journey, and I'd love for you to speak about it because you are very well versed with many styles and genres of music, and that's your upbringing, and you have experience doing it, kind of leading, like taking where you just left off with, like learning other styles of playing. And when you start to, I don't want to talk about my experience. I want to hear about your experience. It's
all the times, the years I played 28 years as a professional, making a living, then 4 or 5 prior. And when you got in my car, I'll never play classical music. 28 ever. Never play classical music because I'm working. So I listen to orchestra music Monday night before rehearsal for the week. And otherwise, I never play it. I've never listened to it because I studied. I know it, so I don't listen. I've never listened to it. And I remember when Terrence used to come to Pittsburgh, I'd pick him up, take the guys out and stuff, walk in. He'd say, "Man, check it out." So I'd be Sting in there, or Stevie Wonder, or punk music. I mean, you name it. The Police. I don't know. Some rap music, they say the N-word too much, gets on my nerves. But now I like it, So I just, what was the question? Sorry.
No, just about like investment in other styles and being able to do them, to do them really well.
So I really studied my teachers, right? Cloyd Duff was a great drum set player. He played in minstrel shows and vaudeville and all these striptease. And I said, "Mr. Duff, what made you decide to be a timpani player as opposed to a drum set player?" He goes, I thought I'd just be a timpanist. And I got tired of being left on the side of the road from the gig, them not picking me up. And then my other teacher, Richard Weir, was like a drum set player like Buddy Rich. He could play. And he said, "Yeah, I just want to play an orchestra." So I thought, and then my teacher, Bill Wilder, is a great drummer. He's a drummer for the symphony, all the pops. So, drum set was always been an integral part of my playing as a percussionist. That's just. But what's interesting is a lot of percussionists today don't play drum set. You'd be surprised. I mean, you would be surprised. Most orchestra players, they can't play drum set at all. Nothing. Got nothing. They can't do it. And most music schools don't teach drum set. And I I don't understand how you can't play percussion without playing drum set. But so in terms of styles, for me, I like everything, man. I listen to anything from Amarik's, Varese, or I'll listen to Nerve, Jojo Mayer's group, to Marquise Hill. I mean, I don't know that. I like Nine Inch Nails. I mean, Kendrick Lamar. I mean, I like, if it's good, I'll listen to it. I mean, it's like Duke Ellington said, there's good music and bad music.
Well, he didn't say bad. He's just saying good and the other kind.
Oh, that's true. That's right. But at least and music. But I mean, I like country music. I mean, as a drummer, you have to. That's why I did a lot of studio work. That's why, because they didn't really know I played drums. They just thought I played keyboards in the band. Like most people don't know I even played the drums. They don't know I do anything but play timpani. I don't say anything because I don't need to say anything. But the reason I did so much studio work is that they play a country tune, I go, oh man, and then I could play like Journey. I mean, I like rock music. I mean, I could do that. I turn it and I widen the flam up. So I knew a lot of styles and no one ever knew it. So I started to get a lot of work because I could play. And look, you're only playing for like less than a minute. But that's all you need. You need it to feel right immediately. And so, and then I had a few lessons along the way. Like I took some lessons with Peter Erskine. I heard him in Ohio State. I was in college. I like the way he plays the dry cymbal because it reminded me how I move my hands this way. So I called him up and took a lesson with him. And he said, man, look, I'm only famous when I leave New York. When I'm in New York, I'm just regular. I can't. I mean, He said, do I play Latin music? All I try to do is respect the tradition of the Latin feel. And I never forgot that. I thought that was very poignant, and I respect him a lot. We stayed in touch, and then took a couple lessons with Will Smith. What's his name? Yellow Jackets. Will Kennedy.
Kennedy. Mm-hmm.
But I took a couple lessons with Joe Morello and Jim Chapin. And just to work on technique and feel, and they opened me. I had people along the way that kept me open to different styles, and I don't know, man. I've always loved music, so I'm like a music schizophrenic. I mean, I'm all over the map, and I really don't. I'm not necessarily a purist. I'm not. I mean,
you're what I call a natural musician, but trained. You're a trained natural musician, and that's
yeah.
I mean that's to me that's the best kind because you understand the science of music. At the same time, you're led by and also just having taste. I feel like that's a big element for people to develop good taste, and I wanted to lead that into. Can you give me give me one road story, a story from the road or your travels.
My favorite city in Europe is Vienna, and I've been to Europe a few times. You've been a lot more than me. But Vienna is my favorite city on the planet, in the world, and I remember going to Beethoven's house in Salzburg and saw the piano where he wrote Beethoven's 7. Beethoven. No words. Really. I mean, it's one thing my teacher said to me, and he's right. He said, if you can play Beethoven, you can play anything. And he's right. If you can play those 9 symphonies, there's nothing you can't play on timpani. And I think, frankly, the aesthetic of orchestra music, if you can understand Beethoven, any music. The intricacy of Beethoven is something that's applicable to any kind of music. Everything is in it. And you can find Beethoven swing, Beethoven 7 swings. It swings. And there's swing in all music. There's a lot of Beethoven swinging all the time. And that was a poignant moment. And I went to Brahms' grave. That big thing said Brahms on it. Then there was another moment in '93, my first time going to Europe with the Indianapolis Symphony. I was in Mannheim, Germany, and I sat on a bench for like 3 hours, and nobody looked at me. And I thought, first, it must be what it's like to be white, where you can like be invisible. And then second, I thought, oh, this is why all the black artists went to Europe and stayed. I got it. It was like very, very clear. I called my parents and told them that. I told them that. And I got one more. My very first tour with the Pittsburgh Symphony, Zell always wanted to start the tour warm. That was his vibe. He started it warm, like the temperature warm. We had a week in the Canary Islands. That's where we started. And Canary Islands, it was like 80 degrees on the beach playing football, playing Tenerife, Gran Canaria. Then went to Vienna. It was cold. We got off the plane, it was snowing. And then Paris, and all over Germany, then to Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. And I walked where Jesus carried the cross. You know, and I stood where he said the Beatitudes. And one day I had to go back to it's just too much Jesus. It was too much. Too much. And then I went to the Wailing Wall. And you hear those people wailing, and you can hear those thousands of years of wailing. I mean, it was unbelievable, man. I heard their yearning, I heard like slaves on the slave ship. I mean, because we're all connected, you know, and so that was a very riveting time, the Wailing Wall. I mean, those are, I think, yeah. And the first time I played in Carnegie Hall with the Cleveland Orchestra was 1987, and then Avery Fisher in '87. Those are the first, yeah. I played in Carnegie Hall probably 30 times and more with Pittsburgh, but those times are meaningful. Yeah, very. Yeah.
Wow, beautiful. Give our young musicians or aspiring musicians a couple points on practice. What are some of the things from a state of mind? Where should your head be when you go to practice?
This is great. I think the most essential element of practicing at any age is your ability to say no, and it's no to distraction. That's it. You know, and today I think it's difficult because most genres of music now, the level has stayed the same because the requirement to enter hasn't changed. Like in orchestras or military bands and jazz music, you know, the entry level of a certain level of play that would hopefully afford you the ability to make a living standard is still high. The one that's disappointing to me is popular music, because there was a time in popular music, whether it's soul or rock or grunge or whatever, people could actually play their instruments. They could play them extremely well. They could play them, you know. Marvin Gaye's band could play. These people could play their instruments. They played that Motown. They could play. They really understood song form, tension, release. They understood it. Punk music. They could really play their instruments. I mean, that stuff sounds crazy, but they could play. The drummers, they could really do all the fast beat. They could really play. Whereas now, especially sometimes in the R&B and the soul and the hip hop and all that, you have the producers, and they literally make a living on a laptop. Now, what's interesting is, since I've been in quarantine, basically, I've been checking out a lot of Tiny Desk and a lot of these producers, explaining what they do. And I get it. and the sampling is very unique, and it's a specific skill set, and it's unbelievable. Really, it's remarkable what they're able to do. It's incredible. The problem is, I think it gives more of a population of young people the idea that you don't have to master anything in order to make music. And I think mastering an instrument is less about making music, more about the person you can become by just addressing one thing. I think it helps your humanity. It helps you be able to play better with your friends. It helps you be able to communicate. It helps you be able to hear other opposing views and just have a lot of more love about you. And so I think practicing is pretty easy if you put your phone down. Hold on a second. I mean, if you put your phone down, I think it's fairly easy, because I think once you start to address any instrument, it becomes fun to be good at something. It does. It's just the visceral reaction of you do something else and, oh, wow, check it. Wow. I mean, it's actually fun. And I think a lot of young people their fun has been taken away. Because this is fun, but no, that's not really. It's just your thumbs. It's not fun. And then all the activity in your eyes, it's not. It's like sedentary action. It's very strange. It's like you're sitting still, but you're running through this chasm of all this activity, but you're really not experiencing anything. And I think that's what learning an instrument gives you. You can be sitting and playing something, and all of a sudden you can feel like you're flying. You can feel like you're running. There's so many emotions you can experience playing. And then practice is not a chore. I watch, our son turns 4 first. So every night he ends playing the log drum. And he plays his feelings. And say, look, what was that? I was sad. I was very angry here. This is happy. So I can see in a small child the joy it can bring. And then you see like middle school kids in band. It makes them, they're happy. So in terms of encouraging someone young, I think if you just find any instrument and then just pick it up and just play it. Put your phone down and play it. And I think it can bring you more joy than you can imagine. I mean, things as simple as you don't see kids riding bikes in the street. Who doesn't ride a bike?
Yeah, right.
People don't ride bikes. It's a deep thing. It's like you see kids, if you see them in the scooter in the playground, then they get about 5, then they get a bike, and then all of a sudden, by the time they hit 7 or 8, you don't see any kids riding bikes in the street. They're being carted to things. They don't ride bikes. So if they don't ride a bike, how could they possibly want to play an instrument? Because riding a bike takes you falling and doing it over and over again, then all of a sudden you can do it and you go really fast. It's the same equivalent as learning an instrument.
Right.
So
with a lot more depth and possibilities.
Of course.
More expressiveness. Give us I guess we could give us your take here with Tim Adams on your global perspective of what's going on out here in the world, your worldview. I always like to bring this up. So
you mean today?
Yeah, with this COVID-19, with the times that we're in, and you and I, we speak, pretty regular. Just the state of arts in the world. So, because you just touched on it, so I kind of want you to elaborate on this mantra with society and our humanity.
Well, the first thing is have the courage first to deal with yourself before you worry about what's going on with the world, because there's no way to negotiate. I found it out like last week, man. I was like a mess. So I called my buddy Dwayne like at 10:30 at night. He talked me off the cliff. I called my therapist Monday, and now I'm good. And that's real. Because that's the problem sometimes with information, is that you have too much information. And so it was difficult for me to negotiate because now I'm a father, and then I'm a musician. That already makes you kind of look crazy, So now, so I've been talking to various people about how we return, and I think there are a couple of things that I've been thinking about. I only look at the news feed in the morning and at night. I don't inundate myself. I don't look at any of it because I don't want that to take too much space. I just try to get the facts and try to look at the long game. I mean, I'm teaching now, so I'm preparing for fall 2022. So I'm just getting my mind, that's when I'm going to go back to work. And if it happens sooner, I still may not go. But it's really about, I don't think this will ever go away. This is not like the flu. Okay? But it is like the flu because we always will have the flu. And so we learn how to negotiate our way through the flu, whether you take the flu shot or you just try to keep yourself healthy. I think we don't know how long this is going to reoccur. But the thing I'm doing is, and we talk to students, is to not expect it to look the same way. And I think we have to be careful when we go back. And I was talking to a very good friend of mine, this conductor. I like him. He's not like a regular conductor. He's a beautiful man. And he said his concern is, let's say we go back too soon, and people go to an orchestra concert, and the next day 20 people get infected. No one will ever come back. I mean, so it's really strategic how we come back. We can come back. There's no question about it. We're resilient. I mean, we have technology. We have health. We have health facilities. We have scientists. We'll be fine. The key is if we somehow find the balance. What's ironic, as a musician, you have to find a balance between art and commerce. Now you find a balance between life and commerce. So it's tricky, but I'm optimistic because my parents are. They have always and will always be my barometer. I still have them. When they go, they will always be my barometer because, how you doing? Oh man, I'm doing good, doing great. How you doing, son? I'm terrible, but I don't say that. And because I'm trying to figure out how do they look at it, and they just see it. I'm doing great. I'm in the house, but I'm great.
Well, at a certain point, it's like you say, it's a choice. Like what you say with practice, put your phone down and no distractions. So, and what you just said too about too much information is sometimes not good. You just need to be on target with a little bit of good information and to continue going. So,
and this kind of exchange is what will keep us alive. And I think this could be good actually, because now we'll finally talk to each other. Finally, because we have no choice. If you don't talk to somebody, you'll go crazy. If you're not texting, now I think FaceTime and all that stuff, people will actually want to look at a face. For years, people won't even. I would call somebody and get their machine. I text them, they would respond immediately. So now I think the positive I think in this is I hope is that we start to have appreciation for everybody around us. That to me is what I hope comes from this, and there's a certain sense of humanity. I hope it lasts a while. Like 9/11, it lasted for about 3 weeks. And then after about 3 weeks, people are like, hey, how's it going at the grocery store? And then after that, it's like back to regular. But this is different because it has touched the world. So I'm more interested to see how the world changes because everybody has been touched by this. Everybody. I don't know how it's possible. But it has touched the world. It's almost like God rebooting us. It's like, except it's with no water, like Noah. It's just like Noah. There's no Noah's Ark. It's just, okay, everybody. We all have the same thing. Now, how do we come out of this? and I'm hoping more loving, more compassionate. I have my students laugh, and I'm like, yeah, man, whenever I get back out, when I go to the gas station, it'll be, sir, you don't have to thank me so much. No, sir, don't touch me. I'd be so happy to have gratitude for people that serve us that we take for granted. The restaurants, just random people. So my perspective is, first you stay at the house and don't leave. And then I think we have a shot of going back carefully and with compassion. I think we can have social distance if your intention is right. I read something today. Is if you go out as if you have COVID-19, then you will move properly. So I'm not sure if that's that's my prayer, is that we come back more humane. And if this is what we needed, then so be it.
I hope so. I hope so.
The divide is that's another hour.
Well, can you give us just an example or something that you like to do on your instrument, and maybe just give everyone a see of like what your setup is right now currently? I know this is your home setup, but
I can just show you what's down here. This side is where all of some small instruments. That's some marimba there. There.
Yeah.
Those are all my cymbals in there. That's the kit there. All different components. And then this little thing that I'm another multi setup. And snare drums.
Yeah.
And this is kind of electronic. And one instrument that's kind of cool. It's called Whoa. You there? Am I there?
Yeah.
Here we go. Called the A-frame. It's beautiful. Love this thing. It's got like 60 sounds in it, and it's it's the most unique.
It's an electronic instrument.
What's that?
It's an electronic instrument.
It's like this mesh, and then you press in, and it bends. And what's interesting is
it's got a lot of nuance then, so it's like a lot of factors that you can.
It's a lot of
Expressive. You can be very expressive.
extremely expressive, and it's like having a hand drum that has a skin head. But this is one interesting, and this is one of my favorite. I bought this years ago. It's a log drum, but it sounds beautiful. I don't know if you can. I just put it down.
Yeah. It's a nice one.
Yes, I have 3 of these. And,
Awesome.
Yeah, And then my other favorite ones is Voodoo drum. I like this a lot.
Oh yeah, Udo. Yeah.
Then I have a guitar or a Gobichan, which I like a lot.
Again, Tim, what's the name of that instrument?
Gobichan, guitar, Indian instrument. Yeah, so I got 3 different sizes of that. And so there's a lot of, I like all this stuff. Here's an interesting cowbell. You put a lot of reverb on that thing and go, it's unbelievable.
That's super hip. Brilliant. Too bad the mic is not doing the instrument justice, but
you get
so cool. Did you make that? Is that an instrument?
So I have 6 of these, all different. The guy Engelhardt, I can't remember his name, but yeah, you can go on his website and I got these hammer cymbals that are all these funky shapes, and when I would go to PAS, I said, man, give me 8 of those. I mean, I would just buy all and this is they're in my trunk. But I love these. I mean, something this simple. I mean, you can play this, pieces. I mean, it's so expressive. There's so much there. And the sustain is unbelievable. And if you have a nice room. Oh, here's this camera. So I've got a lot of sizes of those, from very small to bigger. You can snap them, and it's really loud. Yeah, so I've got a lot of. There's not much I need now. I mean, before I got married, I sold a lot of gear, but now I'm really interested in metal sounds. Metal sounds and these ethnic instruments. And I got a bunch of hand drums. I've got to learn how to play tar and rick and some electronic, hand sonic, and I'm trying to merge all of it. So I'm playing something acoustic and electronic at the same time. So I'm just trying to explore the possibilities.
Yeah, man. I love it. It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
I think that's why I've never been fans of labels. Some of that's being black too, because when you're black, you do this, you are this, and it's a label by default. And I think that has always irritated me. I mean, it's very much in control. I don't snap out on people, but in my head, I snap out because it's just like that's why I'm very particular about if a friend's a musician, I go, man, my friend is a great musician. I typically don't put anything on, even though they might be a great this. And that's just my own personal sensitivity. That's my own personal soapbox, because that pigeonhole can keep you away from opportunities.
Right.
A person will see you in a particular light. In years ago, I stopped trying to impress on somebody what I could or couldn't do. I just let it go. I mean, those who know, and it doesn't. And there's something for young people. You are who you are, and I think it's important to try to identify that and be comfortable with that. I mean, I'm still trying to figure it out at 50 years. I'm trying to get the order right. For years, I was like, I'm a musician. Not really. I mean, the order should be more like, I'm a child of God. I'm Tim and Louise's son. I'm a husband. I'm a father. Then I'm a musician. Musician need to be at the end, because all of that stuff informs who you are as a musician or artist.
Absolutely.
So, I'm, never get too old to learn. I want to try to improve. So I know Lord knows I'm trying.
Well, is there anything else that you'd like to share on your about your journey, about anything?
Yeah, any and everything is possible. And just dream. I mean, I came from Covington, Georgia, small town. It had 100,000 people in it. I never thought I couldn't. It's that simple. I never thought I couldn't. And I think I was very blessed that everybody around me said that I could.
Brilliant.
Including my community, the people that, I'm the Black community. When integrated, everybody in my community said I could do it. It's very touching when you think about it, that it actually happens.
Sometimes people can see more than what you can see when we're younger.
Well, it's all in your intent on how you want to get the information. That's everything. No one will say no to you. No one. No one. If you really want it, no one. Mm-hmm. And if they say no, you don't want it from them anyway.
Right.
No one, everybody will help you. They will.
Very, very, very important. Very important.
They will help you. Everybody will help you if your intent is right. If you just want to know some information, there's always somebody to help you.
And if they don't know, they might direct you into where you can get it.
Always. It's always about your intent. So I never doubted that I couldn't do it. I was blessed. And sometimes, doing along the way, because you're human, you don't appreciate everything you have like you should. And you get, I deserve more, I should have, But reality is, in the big picture, I was always told I could, and I believed it. And I believed deep down I could do it. So, and this is a Black man in America. So,
There you go.
So it wasn't given to me. That's real. That's not putting any. I'm not having a chip on my shoulder. It's a fact. So obviously, I didn't have any. Nobody closed the door on me. reality, I was good at it. That's all. You just practice. And you practice more than everybody else. And you have a shot.
There you go.
That's all I got.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Here with the one and only Tim Adams, percussionist extraordinaire, musician extraordinaire. Thank you so much, Tim, for being with us today. It's a great honor and pleasure, as always.
I love you, man. Thank you.
Love you too, brother.